Hi, I'm a great fan of a diagram, and so I have created a diagram of what we're going to cover in GAD week, but also the fundamentals, the absolute fundamentals, the things that you need to be aware of in GAD. So here we have generalized anxiety disorder in the middle. Now, GAD is often considered to be uncontrollable and excessive worry, and in fact it's one of the absolute defining features of GAD. So if you feel that you are a great worrier, or if you would say something like, you know, I've always worried, then it might be that you're in the right place. So uncontrollable and excessive worry. But the thing is, and this is one of the, you'll find with GAD, there are a number of things which kind of turn back on themselves. Positive beliefs about worry is correlated very strongly with GAD. So you might say, well, you know, I worry, but I'm actually problem solving. Or you might say, well, you know, I consider all the possibilities, I consider all the alternatives, so if there's something happens, I'm prepared. You might say, well, actually, if I didn't worry, then I wouldn't be, you know, able to manage things because I wouldn't have seen all the possibilities. The thing is, positive beliefs about worry is an unhelpful characteristic of GAD, and it's very highly correlated with having the problem. So what we have to do is, as we go through, we're going to have to think about reframing our belief about worry. And in fact, if you look in the Anxiety Wizard program, you'll find lots of tools to help you to stop worrying. Now, the second really big characteristic of generalized anxiety disorder is intolerance of uncertainty. Now, you might say, well, I'm not intolerant of uncertainty. I just like to be sure about things that I can be sure about. The thing is, here's a question for you. What is your chance of dying today? If you just go about your regular business, what's your chance of dying today? It's actually 1 in a million. Now, you can't eradicate the slim 1 in a million chance that you'll die today. Now, if you do something like scuba diving, which I used to like to do, or skydiving, it goes up to about, I think, 6 to 7 chances in a million that you'll die on any particular day. You can't eradicate that risk. On the other hand, I enjoyed scuba diving for many years, and that was an acceptable risk to me. And you modify the risk by training, by paying attention, by having good equipment, etc. You can't take all of the risk out of life. But the thing about intolerance of uncertainty is like you're running a mental program that says, I cannot accept any risk. And even when you realize that there is some risk, you say, yeah, but what if that 1%, what if it hits me? What if that 1% hits someone that I care about? And that's intolerable. Now the thing is, we need to reprogram your brain to accept that there is a little bit of risk in life. But once we accept risk, and actually, I mean, if you think about it, once we accept that there is a little bit of risk in life, but that enables us to have a happy and productive, fruitful life, we don't actually care about the risk, right? The thing about intolerance of uncertainty is we're trying to not have a bad experience, but GAD gives us a bad experience. Now, negative problem orientation. A lot of people who struggle with GAD think that it's actually a bad thing to think about the problem. It's a bad thing to try to solve the problem in a productive way, because that means that you're actually accepting that you have a problem, and that sort of makes the problem real. So with the negative problem orientation, if you think of it like this, there are two ways you can solve a problem. You can actually go about solving the problem using active problem solving strategies, or you can try to avoid solving the problem. You can try to avoid engaging with the problem. You can, in a sense, pretend that the problem doesn't exist, and you can bounce around looking for miracle or quick fix cures. But a negative problem orientation prevents you from engaging your inherent problem solving ability. If you think about it like this, you solve problems all of the time, and you would normally expect to solve problems. But when you think of a problem as a bad thing to be avoided, then it's not something that you can actually allow your brain to get stuck into. That brings us to cognitive avoidance, right? If I have a problem, if I feel something emotional, I have to avoid thinking about it. If I feel a little bit upset, then I have to pretend it doesn't exist. I've got to try to distract myself. I've got to take myself away from it because it will become overwhelming. Cognitive avoidance is a really unhelpful strategy to avoid feeling what would be normal and natural. The trouble is, what you do end up feeling is way magnified, is way bigger than anything you would have felt ordinarily. So here's the thing about GAD, right? In principle, you don't have a problem, but you're running a number of brain programs, such as uncontrollable and excessive worry, the positive beliefs about the usefulness of worry, an intolerance of uncertainty in general in life, and feeling that things are uncontrollable, which is why you need to worry about them, of course, a negative problem orientation, and then, of course, cognitive avoidance. You're running these as programs in here, and these programs give you the experience of GAD. But if you stopped running those programs, which is what we're about, then you wouldn't have the experience. And that's actually what happens when you go through cognitive behavior therapy. Using this model, using these as the kind of core building blocks of the problem, and then treating those core building blocks through CBT, using what's called a meta-analysis, where you analyze, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people who've been through programs. The typical or the average cure rate, remission rate, is about 51%. Now, in my hands, in my clinic, I think that's much higher than that. But it's, when you accumulate lots of studies, the averages tend to sort of go lower and whatnot. So there's a good chance, more than a 50% chance, that if you actually follow the path using this model and do the self-help CBT programs and do the self-help CBT treatment, then you'll end up not having to have generalized anxiety disorder. And that's actually a very good thing, because whilst GAD often feels like you can, I came across a nice phrase the other day. We might think, GAD is a bit like being the walking worried, sort of generally just worrying, but getting on with your life. And someone said to me, actually, it's more like being the walking wounded. It impairs your life in all sorts of different ways, but you can probably still function. But the quality of your life in every area is diminished with GAD. So this is what we're about. We're going to tackle each of those. We're going to certainly discuss it in this GAD week. And we're going to focus on a little strategy or tool that you can use. In the end, of course, the full treatment package would have to be longer than just what I'm providing in GAD week, because you've had the problem for so long. And if you've been one of these people that say, I've always worried, then where you are now is the end of that long journey of having always worried. And that's something that we need to really put to bed. So I hope you found this interesting. This is the basic roadmap for what we're trying to do, and please leave comments, questions, whatever you like. I'll be very happy to answer anything that you post in the Mental Health Wizard Facebook group.